What's going on, guys? Alpha the Wizard back at it with another video. Today we're going to be continuing the meta history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And today I'm going to also do a deck profile for one of the most prominent decks in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history, none other than Diamond Dude Turbo. So the Destiny Hero cards and Stratos came out in February of 2007, but Stratos immediately went to 1 in the March ban list, and this deck lived on for the remainder of the year and for probably another year to come. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and hop into the profile because this is a prominent deck in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history. Alright, so to start things off, we have none other than Diamond Dude himself. Now, Diamond Dude has a really cool effect. If you aren't familiar with the card, basically you can excavate the top card of your deck, and if it is a normal spell card, send it to the graveyard and you can activate it next turn with no cost. So this card synergizes really well with cards like Trade-In, Destiny Draw, Lightning Vortex. There's a number of good spell cards that you can hit off of this, but this is indeed a turbo deck for those kind of cards as well. So to continue the profile, we also play 3 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious. Now, Malicious was really important in this deck because, this was the start of Yu-Gi-Oh! Really getting power crept and speeding up the pace. So Malicious just gives you access to, another D-draw target, but also you can tribute this by using its effect to summon one from deck, if it's in your graveyard, for a Jinzo, or if you have 2 monsters for Dark Magician of Chaos. But yeah, and then we also play Destiny Hero Dasher. Dasher is really good in this deck because if you do draw like a Dark Magician of Chaos for turn, you can just special summon it in the draw phase. But it's also another really good body, allowing yourself to tribute a monster to increase his attack by 1,000. But yeah, Dasher is pretty decent in this deck, especially for this time in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history. But then, of course, what would this engine be without the infamous Stratos? Now, Stratos is another card that's prominent to Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history because this card nets you essentially Malicious, Disc Commander, or Diamond Dude. So yeah, Stratos is another key component that makes this engine work because essentially we're just relying on the Destiny Hero engine. This particular build does not play Disc Commander because it wasn't completely necessary in Diamond Dude Turbo. And then we also have Jinzo. Jinzo was a powerful card at this time because there was a lot of back row heavy decks and also the anti-meta decks like maybe Gadgets. And Jinzo was just really good at just shutting off like their Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, Sakuretsu Armors, whatever the case may be. And then we also have the star of the deck, and that is Dark Magician of Chaos. This card is absolutely nuts in this deck because it synergizes so well. You have so many power spells that are going to be fueled in the graveyard via Reasoning and Monster Gate, and this card, pre-errata, on summon could just add any of them back of your choice. So yeah, you can do some really degenerate things with Dark Magician of Chaos. Also, adding on to the monsters, we play two copies of Card Trooper. Card Trooper was pretty decent at best in this deck because it allows you to mill 3, and there are good mills that you want to hit, like maybe Divine Sword Phoenix Blade, but I'll touch on that later in the profile. But yeah, so this right here is the sum of all the monsters that you would ideally need to run in Diamond Dude Turbo. You may get away with cutting down on a Card Trooper. Some people opted to play Destiny Hero Plasma, but in my experience, I think this is the perfect ratio of monsters. So that's really it for those. Now moving on to the bread and butter, the spell cards. Now this deck wanted to go through your deck as fast as possible and does so due to cards like Monster Gate. Monster Gate is really good because it's very easy for you to Destiny draw a Malicious and then draw 2, summon a Malicious from deck, and then just freely Monster Gate. And you thin your deck of a Malicious, so your potential bad mills are a lot thinner. But in addition to that, we do only play 2 copies of Reasoning. Reasoning is infinitely worse than Monster Gate in this deck because we do play 3 Diamond Dudes and a Stratos, which are all level 4. So if they do call level 4, which is the most common in this era, most people probably will call 4, because Dark Magician of Chaos is usually the only level 8, even though that's the problem card. Half the time they're calling 4. So Reasoning is a lot worse at 3 if they're always calling 4. But then also, we have to max out on Magical Stone Excavation. The reason why we max out on this card is because we're able to draw through so many cards in our deck to the point where it's okay if we just discard cards like Divine Sword Phoenix Blade, because we can just banish warriors from our graveyard and add it right back. And that makes this card even more powerful, being able to add any spell card from our graveyard that we may have milled. So now we get to a little bit more of the draw power. So we play 3 Destiny Draw. Destiny Draw for good reason. We definitely have to have this card in the deck. Because, you know, obviously we're just fueling it with a Destiny Hero engine. So 3 Destiny Draw is just 100% mandatory. In addition to D-Draw, I also opt to play 3 copies of Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. Now, this card is debatable at 2 or 3, but I think there's so many good discard outlets, especially playing Magical Stone Excavation, and then we'll get into some more later in the profile. But this card is so good, and it's the best mill off of Monster Gate or Reasoning because it's just a free card for free discard fodder. And that is also why we opt to max out on Lightning Vortex. Now, at this time in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, the most prominent decks were the Mirror Match. So you would see quite a bit of Diamond Dude Turbo, but then people are also playing decks like Monarchs, Demise OTK, and then also there is a Machine OTK deck. So half the time, you know, when they do get big monsters on the field or even like a Spirit Reaper, we always have a way to clear it with Lightning Vortex, and we always want to have this card easily accessible. So that's why we play 3. And then just to make the engine more consistent, we do play 2 Reinforcements of the Army. This just guarantees that we can get the Stratos relatively quick, because we definitely want to start our Destiny Hero engine so we can start the D-Draw shenanigans and all that good stuff. And then we do opt to play 1 copy of Heavy Storm. Heavy Storm is just for good reason. You know, it's a blowout card. If you're going second, you can clean up the board and proceed to try to pop off and OTK your opponent. But also it's a normal spell card that you can hit off of Diamond Dude. How good that feels to hit a Heavy Storm going first off of Diamond Dude. It really feels amazing, because even if you can't set up a crazy board, but you know, you have another turn to do so, Heavy Storm just guarantees you get to clean them up. But then we also opt to play Confiscation. They allowed this card to be legal this format. Now, granted, a lot of people did sideboard this card this format, but I personally think maining it in a deck full of, you know, you want to have as many normal spells as possible, Confiscation is just such a good hit. But also, in addition to that, to fuel our engine a little bit more, we do play Card Destruction. Card Destruction is really good in this deck because if we're able to get like 2 Divine Swords in our hand, plus some other cards that we may not need, we can just draw a new hand. And we can also see what our opponent's on as well, and then structure our plays accordingly. And then we do play 1 copy of Premature Burial. For obvious reasons, Premature Burial can revive your Dark Magician of Chaos if, you know, let's say they do call 8 off Reasoning, or you could discard the Democ off of Magical Stone Excavation and then revive it with Premature. It's really good. And then we do play 1 copy of Snatch Steal because this card is still legal. Why they would let this card be legal, I have no idea, but we pretty much just have to play it. And then I forgot to take this card out of one of the other retro decks. It's very expensive, so don't judge me, but we do play 1 copy of Dimension Fusion. Now, if you're not familiar with what Dimension Fusion does, This card, you pay 2,000 life points. Both players special summon as many remove from play monsters as possible. So that is part of the central strategy of the deck. You're trying to remove a bunch of monsters from play with Divine Sword and then Dimension Fusion it back. I do have a copy of this, and I do apologize that I didn't put it in the video. But yeah, that's really it for all the spell cards of the deck, and these are all the essentials. You can switch up ratios as you want, but these should work just fine. Now, we only play 4 trap cards. This deck isn't really a trap heavy deck. We do play 3 Threatening Roar, just because Threatening Roar helps to buy us more turns in order to fuel our engine even more. Or if we just end on a Diamond Dude, you know, it's very good to have Threatening Roar because then we're getting more potential hits off Diamond Dude. And yeah, Threatening Roar just protects us from dying as well. And then the last card I play is Mirror Force, just because Mirror Force is really, really good this format, especially with the being so many OTK decks out there. This card is just a blowout card that if they do see it in your deck, they are going to play around it. They probably won't play around Mirror Force if they see you're on Diamond Dude Turbo, even though a lot of them did opt to run Mirror Force for this exact reason. But yeah, opponents have to play very safe with this card in the format. But yeah, so that's the end of the profile. I really hope you enjoyed this. There wasn't an extra deck for this deck at the time. You didn't really need an extra deck because you're just summoning big monsters. But yeah, so stay tuned for the next episode where I'm going to be covering Demise OTK. And with all that being said, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.